Hello, everyone, and thank you to everyone joining us today. We've got a fun webinar, probably one shorter relative to some of the prior ones that we've done, but a really fun overview of the Looker marketplace, which I think, in our opinion, is kind of like an under-leveraged bit of Looker for many organizations. You've just got me today, and so I'm going to run you through how we use the marketplace, what type of stuff we find there that we like, how you can manage it, what permissions you need, all that type of stuff. For those of you who haven't joined us for one of these before, we run these webinars every 2 weeks at exactly this time slot. So it's 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern, 5 p.m. BST or GMT, whatever time it is, whatever time zone the UK is in at that time of year. We will have one again in 2 weeks. We actually don't have any up on the site yet, but we'll be putting those up in the next week or so. And so you can head to spectacles.dev/webinars to watch all of our prior ones. There are recordings for all of them are available there. And for many of them, the slides are available as well. But also it's where you can sign up for any future webinars that we will be hosting. And so that's always the best place to check. Who is this person speaking to you today? My name's Dylan. I'm one of the co-founders here at Spectacles. I've got, I think, coming up on maybe 8 years now of experience developing on Looker. I was fortunate to be one of the first large enterprise rollouts of Looker back in 2016. I then became a freelance consultant and was a Looker consulting partner and managed at least a dozen Looker instances as a Looker consulting partner, either kind of greenfield deployments or coming in and helping people kind of clean stuff up or decide how they want to, what the future of their Looker projects and Looker instances was gonna be. And so a couple of years ago, taking all that experience and really from my consulting work, started Spectacles with my co-founders and have been doing that ever since. What are we going to talk about today? Roughly, we're going to break it down into 4 sections. First is what is the Looker marketplace. The second is how to install things, how to go and find the thing you want and actually set it up on your instance. I'm then going to highlight a couple of our favorite marketplace resources. I'm going to highlight 3 of them that we think are maybe most useful to people, most interesting to explore right away. And then we've just got a bit of stuff around how you manage the things that you've installed over time and update them and things like that. Before we jump into all of that, we manage all the Q&A and discussion around these webinars in Slack. And so I'm just dropping the links to our Slack channel in the chat so that you can go there, join that channel, let us know where you're joining from, and also post any questions you have during the webinar so that I can answer them at the end. And let's get that screen share working again. There we go. So on that note, let's jump in. So the Looker marketplace is a place, as they say here, to explore powerful applications, models, and custom visualizations. It's basically a place where organizations, mostly Google, but not exclusively, have shared applications that they've built, LookML blocks that they've built, or custom visualizations that they've built that you can very easily install and use in your Looker instance. And it came out a couple of years ago. It's had a bit of an overhaul since and has kind of come out or has been, I guess, closely tied with like the Looker extension framework, which is what allows you to build the applications and is the way that you would install applications built by Google themselves, of which there are a couple. You can see here at the bottom of the screenshot, there's a couple there. The API Explorer and the Data Dictionary too that we'll talk about in detail later in this webinar are really useful extensions of Looker, depending on your setup and what how you're using Looker in your organizations may be able to help you quite a bit quite quickly. So as I said, the kind of resources that break down that you can find in the marketplace that are broken down in the marketplace are applications. So this is things like the Data Dictionary, the API Explorer, and things like that. And these are basically fully immersive experiences, full applications that you access through the Looker UI and Looker interface. The second is what they call models, what people might have historically thought of or referred to as Looker blocks or LookML blocks. These are things like, these are just snippets of code or basically full models, projects of code that you can quickly deploy and typically work with like a standard data set of some sort. So cost management is a good example of this on either GCP or AWS. And they're basically things where there have probably been repeated patterns in modeling over time. And it makes sense that lots of people are doing the same type of analysis to provide it out of the box, so that you can quickly go straight from like data set all the way through to certainly explorers being built out. And in many of them, they come with their own LookML dashboards. And so in some cases, if you've got the right data set, you can install the LookML, the Looker model for it from the marketplace and immediately have a bunch of stuff ready to go that you can then tweak from there. And then the third category is visualizations. Visualizations by default is, I think, it's not that it's not the strong suit of Looker, but it's rarely the thing that people go to Looker for. People go to Looker for the governance and the semantic layer and all that type of stuff. And sometimes you want to use a visualization that doesn't ship with Looker by default. You can do that yourself. You can build your own custom visualizations, and we'll likely actually do a webinar on that in the next couple months. But there's also a bunch of non-default ones that you can install very easily through the marketplace. Things like Sunburst, things like calendar heat maps, and things like that are there. And so roughly all the content in there is categorized in one of those three categories. Almost all of these are built by Google. It's probably like 95%, but there are a handful built by partners, companies like Fivetran, Stitch, Braze, and Segment. I think those are all on the model side. Those are all like LookML blocks that relate to some data set that is typically kind of generated by those four tools. And most of it these days is managed by Looker, Google themselves. If you've never visited the marketplace, it is likely enabled by default on your instance. There's a button in the top right corner that I'll show you in just a second that is where you can find it. If you are on local Google Cloud Core, which is kind of the newer version or the new way of deploying Looker, that you can do through the GCP console, it is not currently available there yet. It will be in the near future. And I think that's kind of like months, not quarters or years. But you can also, if you're on Looker Google Cloud Core, install everything that we're going to talk about today with the source code itself, which is linked to from the marketplace. And so just because you're on Looker Google Cloud Core doesn't mean you can't use all the stuff that we're going to talk about today. It just means that as of today, whatever we are, the 6th of September, 2023, you can't go into the marketplace via your Looker instance. But I'm told that is coming very soon for people on Google Cloud Core Looker. And then for certain of the things that you might install through the marketplace, you may need to enable certain labs features that you can find in the settings. You need an admin to do that. Many people have these on by default today, so you may find that you don't run into any of this, but that is just something to be aware of. And Looker will point you in the right direction when you get to the point where you need to have something enabled. I'll talk about this a little more later, but if you're a Looker admin, you can really do any of this. You can install stuff from the marketplace. You can update. You can delete it. If you are a lesser user for most Looker instances, you can go into the marketplace. You can explore everything. You can see what's there, but you'll need an admin to install it for you. And so that's a case of going to whoever manages Looker in your organization and letting them know, hey, I'd like to test this thing. Could you please, I guess, upgrade me to admin, or more likely, could you just install this for me so that I can test it out? So that brings us to, how do you actually install things from the Looker marketplace? I mean, where do you find it first and foremost, I guess, and then how do you install things? And so I've because there's bits of it that can just wait and while stuff's installing, I've done a GIF of this. And so there's a button in the top right corner there for marketplace, and if you click Discover, that's going to take you into the marketplace where you can browse all of the things that are available to you. And so you can click one. If you find one that you like, you can read the overview, and at the top, there's an install button. And so you can click install with the default installation method, and it's going to spend some time preparing stuff. It's going to ask you to agree to the licenses. It's going to tell you what APIs it's going to be using. And then for all of them, you need to set a connection. Mostly, for most of them, it's just because they require like a connection as part of just the config, even though it's not actively being used. And then you can click in and use it. And so this is like abridged in that like one of those modals just said preparing for 30 seconds, but otherwise you can really be in and using something within less than a minute, particularly if you know what you're looking for. But if you click discover, you'll see all the stuff in here. They highlight a couple at the top, particularly their applications, which are the things that they're trying to drive people to the most. But underneath, there's models, there's visualizations, there's all of that type of stuff. And so it's really easy. And the other thing you can see here is you can see the source code. So for all of them, you can see the source code in GitHub. If you're interested in like what you're installing on your instance, that is also, if you're on Looker Google Cloud Core, that is also the source code that you will install, that you'll use to install it manually on your instance. And so the key thing to remember is basically click on what I think of as like the banana stand from Arrested Development in the top right corner of your instance. And from there, it's pretty much totally straightforward. Once things are installed, users will see them down the left-hand nav bar. So you'll see that there's an applications drop down there, and that is where users can access these things once they are installed. So from there, we want to talk a little bit about a couple of the marketplace resources that we like the most, or we think that are the most interesting to people. So we at Spectacles obviously rely very, very heavily on the Looker API. Our business wouldn't exist without it. And we generally think that people may not be leveraging, or there are lots of options for people to leverage Looker to its fullest extent by doing custom things on top of the Looker API that are specific to your org, that will make your life easier, help you provide interesting workflows or developer experiences or data applications, whatever it might be to your org, that are reliant on the Looker API. And for lots of people, using the Looker API can be a little daunting. It has a lot of endpoints. You need to learn how to call it from whatever programming language you want to use. In our case, it's typically Python. But what I'm showing you here in the screenshot is the Looker API Explorer, which is a UI that I guess at its core provides documentation around all of the endpoints that you can use in Looker, but also gives the ability to test the endpoints in a really easy way. So you can see here, I've gone to the endpoint for update look, and with just giving the ID of the look and then filling out a bit of information, I can immediately test the API and get a sense of what I'm able to do with it. And so this could be to update content, it could be to delete content, it could be to update users, to run a query, almost anything or pretty much anything you can do in Looker, you can do via their API. And so the API Explorer is a really good way to get your feet wet, to kind of test it out, get a sense of what is possible, to try certain things in like a manual, click and type way before you maybe want to go to a coding language or test to kind of write something that's more productionized. Or maybe you're working with a team, you're kind of trying to build up a request for someone. You don't feel you have the skill set to write, let's say, Python code on top of the Looker API, but you have some organization who can, and you want to provide them with detailed instructions and validate that what you're thinking of building is possible. This is a really good way to go through and test all the endpoints, get a sense of what is possible, and make sure that the thing that you put into a proposal to your organization or something like that is all possible through Looker, and that you're not kind of sending anyone down a wild goose chase. So that's the first one. We use this a ton ourselves while we're developing. And on many Looker organizations, it's actually installed by default. So you may not even need to go into the marketplace to install it. But if it's not, that is where you'd go and do it. The second one is the Looker Data Dictionary. They released this, it's got to be over a year ago now, maybe a couple of years ago now. And it's a way to explore, for lack of a, I guess, better word, all of the dimensions and measures and things like that are available in your Looker instance. And so it gives people the ability to go model by model, see all the explorers, see which fields are in there. Sometimes, particularly if you're a large organization, you've got, once you're at 20, 30 explorers, let alone 100, 200 explorers, it's sometimes hard for people to find which explorer they need when they're doing, a net new piece of research. They're trying to find something, and it could be in a couple different places. This is a useful way for people to see everything in one place. Either they know what explorer they want, they can go here and see all the descriptions, see what types they are, stuff like that, filter for certain types of fields. They've got all this stuff at the top, as to, is it a dimension, is it a measure, what type is it, and things like that, and search for things. But you can also use it to just find the explorers themselves. You can search within a model for explorers with different names, and use that as a way to navigate Looker as an explorer of Looker. It also has all the SQL, so if people want to understand at a high level, quickly kind of see what is being done on different fields, that can be really useful as well. A lot of this information is available within each explorer, but you kind of need to use the tooltips and stuff to find it on a dimension or measure, like a field by field level. And that can sometimes be cumbersome. And so often, if you want to get like a lot of this information in one go, see all the fields that are available, not have to like toggle through, view groups and stuff like that in the Explorer, this can be really, really useful for that. It's definitely not perfect. It's not going to be a replacement for a third-party data cataloging tool that will have both your Looker information, but tie it with your warehouse, with dbt, maybe with your ETL and stuff like that. But as a quick win for lots of orgs, this is often a good way to see things. It's also a good way to motivate people to write descriptions and things like that. If you're an org that is lax on like the documentation you've got around Looker, enabling this so that people can see where those gaps are can be really, really useful. If you do want to enforce things like descriptions, you can use the spectacles linter to do so as well. So if that's a journey you're trying to go down at the moment, definitely come have a conversation with us. But this can definitely be a tool to help you just share information with people, and I guess coerce them into writing more documentation and definitions if that's what you're looking for. And then the third thing I want to highlight today isn't any single visualization, but it's just that there is a ton of visualizations available through the Looker marketplace. We've got kind of heat maps here. We've got Sankey diagrams, sunburst, I think is what that one's called, kind of just a gauge ring filled, more traditional like report structured stuff. So if you ever want to do something kind of that needs a different type of chart, or maybe you have people saying, hey, I'd like to be able to use more charts in Looker, go have a look at all the charts that are available in the marketplace. They may well be able to solve your need and kind of empower people with slightly more resources, more options when it comes to what visualizations that they have available to them in Looker. What I would say about the visualizations is it's not always immediately evident exactly like what structure of data, what combination like dimensions and measures you need to have in what way to fit to one of these. Often they'll provide instructions. When you click on it, it'll give you a message that says, hey, this expects 1 dimension and 2 measures. But if it doesn't, there is also a GitHub repo for each of these visualizations. You can see those and find them from the marketplace. And often those will also have a README that explains exactly how to use it. So if you do install these and you want to consolidate some of that information in some way, you could probably generate your own markdown file in your Looker instance that says like, hey, here's the custom ones that we've installed. Here's what they expect, to just help people on board to the new visualizations as easily as possible. But there really are there's a lot in there, and I genuinely recommend going and have a look. The other thing I would say is they are written in the same framework and language that you would need to use if you wanted to write your own custom visualizations. So if you don't find exactly what you need, but you want to go and try to add your own, most of them are written, I believe, in D3.js. So you'd need some JavaScript skills. But if you really just want to do something, even if, particularly if it's particularly close to something that's there, but not quite there, either maybe you have the ability to write JavaScript, you know how to do that, but you may even be able to figure it out yourself, just kind of tweaking a couple things here or there just to make it more custom and personalizable to your organization. I mean, for some things that could even just be changing the color in the liquid gauge and things like that. So a lot of that is in the code base. You can install these things manually just via code as well. And if you are looking for a project to skill up and write custom viz, maybe from the ground up, these are a good place to go and get a sense of how you might do that. Finally, managing the Looker marketplace. So content in the Looker marketplace will periodically get updated. Applications will get bug fixes, they'll get new functionality. These don't update by default. And so you can go and update them by clicking the button in the top right corner. There'll then be a manage button there. And if something has an update, you just click update, and it typically takes a couple seconds. So typically, if you've installed a bunch of these things in your org, I'd recommend just setting yourself a reminder maybe once a month, once every couple months, to go in there, see if any new functionality has been released for anything you're using. As I said, as I right at the top here, it's typically for the applications, but visualizations will also get updates periodically, particularly around kind of like bug fixes or UX improvements. You can also delete things in that same UI. So if you click manage at the top there under the marketplace button, if you have been playing with something and you want to remove it, you don't think it's a good fit for your org or whatever it might be, and you don't want other people accidentally using it, just head in there, delete it. And it's very easy to do as well. And I talked about this earlier, but if you're a standard user and you want to see which applications are installed in your instance, down the kind of left-hand nav bar on your homepage, the bottom like drop down there is called applications, and you'll be able to just go there right away and see what is installed and go and test it out. That's it for the presentation portion this week. So I hope you've all found that useful. And I will answer some questions from the Slack channel if you all have any. So yeah, please head over there. I'm going to stop sharing for a sec while I have a look at whether there's any questions. But if you do have any questions about this topic, about custom viz or anything like that, please send them over. I can see a couple people are typing, so I'll wait for those to come in. The one thing I want to call out while we're waiting for some of the questions is many of the webinars recently have been the team from Spectacles presenting, but we'd love to get more Looker users on these webinars talking about really anything, whether you've like set up an interesting process to like certify dashboards, or you've built something to improve the developer experience, or you've built like a way for people to find the content that is most useful to them, or you just tackled some like hard process or like people problem around Looker. We'd really love to have you on the webinar. We'd love to like work with you to refine the idea if it feels like half-baked at all. So please please just like get in touch either via the site or our emails, which is mine's Dylan@spectacles.dev. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to kind of help you put something together and present it to the Looker community. First question has come in. Have you had official confirmation that the marketplace will be available in Cloud Core? I've dabbled with custom viz and extensions and worried that they'll deprecate it or replace it with something different. I definitely was told at some point that it's coming to Google Cloud Core. I'm just gonna try to find, there was a note in the docs as well somewhere. So I'm like 95% confident that it will be coming. You will also be able to install all this like custom stuff directly from the code as well. I don't see that going away. I think they've invested a ton in like the Viz libraries and the way that works and the extension framework. So I think regardless, that will be always available. But I'm reasonably confident it will also be in Google Cloud Core as well. I can't find the docs immediately that suggested that was the case, but I can also confirm that and follow up in Slack. Also curious if you or anyone has examples of extensions. There's only one on the marketplace that's not made by Google. While I've heard that getting on the marketplace itself can be tricky, I'm surprised that no one has made anything much that I know of. The use case that we've seen a lot is typically not for public things, but it's for large like enterprise organizations who want to build something custom for their org using that. So I think I agree there hasn't been like a ton of public dev. I think around the hackathons and stuff that have happened over the past couple of years, we've probably seen examples of this. But I know that particularly the large consultancies, the kind of like Bytecodes 4 Miles and others, Datatonics, people like that, have done stuff like this, but I think it's kind of on an ad hoc basis for uh, particular customers that's particular to their use case. Um, I think that's partly, I think there's a couple. I mean, one, it's people like have they're large enterprises, they're going to have the resources where the like cost benefit analysis of investing all this money in like a single project in Looker is going to make sense. But I think also it's like, I think part of the reason that we've not seen a ton of public stuff is I think a lot of it is in like React and JavaScript, and that's typically not a language that data engineers, data analysts are necessarily that comfortable with. And so I think that's one of the barriers for people. But so I think a lot of the use cases have been around like in orgs for internal stuff. And it's been I've seen a whole range of things like um, custom ways of exploring maps and like having a map where the data underneath and the query updates per that and things like that. So I'd love if anyone on here has built something. I mean, that's a core like use case of that we'd love to have on the webinar. So if you are comfortable coming on and talking about it, we'd love to have you on. But yeah, Simon, haven't seen a ton of like public stuff. I agree. And certainly a lot of the stuff in there is built by the Looker team. Perfect. Well, I think that may be it for questions this week. I'll be talking for another minute, so if anyone has one, please fire away. But as I said, would love to have any of you come on the webinar and present something on a topic that anything that you've built or not even built. Like I think a lot of the stuff we don't talk about around Looker is the like personnel and how you educate people and train people. And so even if what you've got is like, here's how we set up Looker training for our whole organization, and we're pretty pleased with how it went, we'd love to have you on to talk about that type of stuff as well. I can see one person typing, so I will wait for that final question, answer that, and then let you all get on with the rest of your days. Oh, the typing may have stopped. No, there we go. Some of the visualizations, like the gauge, seem a bit buggy versus the deprecated version. Is the best way around this to just build our own? Yeah, all the code. I agree that some of the custom viz aren't perfect. Definitely, what I'd recommend is like take the code, see if you can figure out what's going on, and like just install your own. I think a lot of them, to the extent that they're a little buggy, they're not like a million miles away from like being perfect for what you might want. And so building your own and just like or forking it and installing that forked version once you've made a couple changes is definitely what I would recommend there. The other thing I guess I'd say on the Viz side is like Looker has done a lot of work, as we covered in the webinar probably a couple months ago now, to get Looker available in Looker Studio, what used to be Data Studio, that does have a bunch of like additional Viz stuff. And so this isn't really related to the marketplace, but if the topic of like, hey, we want to do more intricate visualization stuff, I'd have a look at the integration with Looker Studio. Have a look at our webinar about it, because that is also an option of like a route to take, particularly if you want to do something like very specific around like Viz, but you still want to have it built on the Looker semantic layer. Perfect. Oh, sorry. One final question. Can the Looker Studio Vizes be created within Looker? Is that code in Git? No, I don't believe it is. So it's not like you can take the Viz from Looker Studio and put it within Looker, at least not today. It's possible that's on the future roadmap of the Looker team. The options there are just to like build that Viz in Looker Studio and share that Looker Studio report with people if you wanted to go down that direction. Perfect. We'll call it there for today. Really appreciate all the questions. Really appreciate all the engagement. We'll be posting the upcoming webinars in the next week or so up on the website, and we'll send an email to everyone once those are live. And we will see you all there. So thanks again for joining, and have a great day, everyone. See you soon.